All right, hello there, comrades. Thanks for joining me on this Sunday evening here in Moscow. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Donald Corder, editor-in-chief and host of The Revolution Report. Hope you like that new intro we made. I thought it was pretty cool, and we're probably going to use that from now on as well. If there are any problems with the audio or anything, just let me know in the chat, because I want to make sure that everything is technically sound so you can see me clearly, hear me clearly. A lot of times with this streaming software, it can be a bit glitchy and everything. So, without further ado, we're going to begin our live stream that I'm going to try and start doing basically every week. I'm going to give you guys Marxist-Leninist, anti-imperialist perspectives on contemporary news and analyses and stuff like that, alongside the regular content output that we're putting out on the channel. So, as you saw, the title has to do with sketchy chemical things, a neo-Nazi yoga master. It has to do with Ukrainian debt slaves. There's a lot of interesting stuff to talk about today, because there's been a lot of interesting stuff in the news over the last week and 2 weeks ago as well. So, without further ado, let's begin. I'm going to begin this live stream with a pretty extensive story that begins all the way back in 2022, actually, in March of 2022. This is about this sketchy chemical stuff. I mean, obviously, you guys have been watching the news. You've heard probably the first, chemical train derailment that you heard of was probably the one in East Palestine in Ohio. And since then, there's just been a huge number of train derailments all of a sudden. I mean, it's not like we haven't had trains before then, or trains carrying chemicals before this East Palestine train derailment, right? It's really strange how all of a sudden we're hearing all about this. Chemical train derailments all over the place. Several trains have not only derailed, but released hazardous materials into the air that are, negatively affecting the lives of the people who live in these areas. So, it's definitely a bit strange how all of a sudden we've just seen a high concentration of this. And it is actually all happening parallel to something that has not been reported very much, especially in the Western media, because they probably just consider it to be, Russian propaganda or conspiracy theory. So I've got my own speculative idea about what all these chemical train derailments have to do with. I obviously, this is just speculation. I don't have any evidence, but based on the sort of coincidence of all these events together, I think there's a large chance that something seriously weird is going on here. This story begins on March 12th of 2022. This was when Moscow actually rejected accusations made by Washington that Russia was going to use chemical weapons in Ukraine in the special military operation. I don't know if you guys heard about that. You might have. It got a little bit of attention, but it quickly was not, it wasn't really paid that much attention. And how did Moscow reject this accusation from Washington? Well, the Russian ambassador to the United States said that obviously there's no evidence for this accusation. Russia is not planning on using chemical weapons in the special military operation. On the contrary, the Russian ambassador to the United States said that it was the United States that was looking to use chemical weapons, or rather supply the Ukrainians with chemical weapons so that they could use it on the battlefield in Ukraine, in Donbass, wherever the special military operation, the conflict is extending to. And he also backed up this claim with the fact that, well, hello, Russia doesn't have any chemical weapons. Russia gave up its chemical weapons in accordance with international law, and that was confirmed by the OPCW. The United States did not. The United States still has chemical weapons officially, and they're supposed to decommission them, and they still officially have, stockpiles of chemical weapons, which Russia does not, at least officially, of course. But the OPCW has determined that Russia doesn't have them, and the United States says we still have them. and whether or not we're going to get rid of them is a matter of time and willingness, I guess you could say. And this is also around the same time, actually. Remember the US biolabs in Ukraine that they admitted to the existence of? But obviously Victoria Nuland and the Pentagon, they said it was for like medical research. But a thing to keep in mind is that a lot of these pathogens that were being experimented on in these biolabs in Ukraine have dual usages. They could be used either in medicine or as a component of a biological weapon. And that actually brings us to something that happened not very long after this accusation was made by Washington, after Moscow rejected it and said, no, it's the United States that's looking to use chemical weapons in this conflict. Just about a month after this happened, in August 20th, 2022, there were mass reports by Russian soldiers that they had received injuries and they had to be hospitalized due to chemical burns, due to weapons that were being used by the Ukrainian military that had given them chemical burns, and they were being treated for chemical weapons injuries in these hospitals. Interestingly enough, the traces of this chemical weapon that were found on the Russian troops in these hospitals, it was actually, it's considered a chemical weapon only because it was determined to have had an artificial origin. But it was actually a chemical weapon based on a biological agent. It's I have the thing here. It's called I think it's pronounced botulinum toxin type B. It's a biological poison of artificial origin that was found on these affected Russian service people, and it's known to be one of the most toxic biological substances known to man. Now, that would actually lend credence the fact that these traces of this chemical, of what's officially considered a chemical weapon, but based on a biological agent, kind of like anthrax, this would lend credence to the claim that the Russian Ministry of Defense found evidence of American bioweapons labs in Ukraine. That would lend credence to that. And obviously this was at the same time that the United States was trying to basically destroy any evidence or any sort of documents connected to these biolabs, as Russia was advancing very quickly over not only the Donbas territory, but also into Ukrainian territory, where tons of these U.S. labs were located, which, again, even the United States acknowledged their existence. They just say it was for medical research, when obviously it was for biological weapons research. But at this point, Russia's defense ministry accused Ukraine of chemical terrorism. But there wasn't any sort of evidence that came after that. I mean, aside from the fact that these Russian soldiers incurred injuries that were clearly from some sort of chemical weapon. But to say exactly where they were from or who exactly were using them, I mean, obviously it came from the Ukrainian side, but to say specifically was not possible at that point. And to say whether or not the Americans were supplying them with some sort of chemical weapons or whatnot, that also was not possible to say for sure. So that was, to remind you, that was August 20th, almost September of 2022. Fast forward a couple months, February 5th, 2023. This is when the train derailment with the chemical agents on board occurred in East Palestine, Ohio. The first chemical train derailment. What kind of chemicals were released here? This is an important thing to keep in mind. High levels of chlorine were released into the air. So this train was carrying chlorine, which is a super common chemical. It's used in cleaning. It's used in pool sanitation, all this different type of stuff. But it can also be used to produce chemical weapons. I mean, pretty much everyone knows if you mix chlorine and ammonia, two very common cleaning appliances, you will get mustard gas. You will get the chemical agent that was used to kill, soldiers en masse in World War II. And that's the trick with these chemicals. So many of them, and as we're going to go through in just a few minutes, so many of them have the seemingly benign purpose of like cleaning or whatnot, but they also have a dual purpose of perhaps creating explosives or creating chemical weapons. So that raises some questions, also because of the fact that just a day after this chemical derailment in East Palestine, Ohio, just a day after, we heard reports from the governor of the Donetsk People's Republic, Denis Pushilin, saying that his office was receiving numerous reports of soldiers falling ill from what looked to be chemical agents. Again, we're getting these reports from Russian soldiers saying that they're having some sort of chemical weapon used against them after this first derailment. And then all of a sudden we see all these other derailments. I have the list right here. There's a huge number of them that I'm not even going to mention. There's a lot more than the ones I'm going to mention. The ones I'm going to mention are mostly just ones that have either confirmed to have they were confirmed to have had chemicals on board, or there was no outright rejection by the authorities of there being chemicals on board. So just about a week after this stuff I just said, February 14th in Tucson, Arizona, an 18-wheeler with chemicals flipped over and nitric acid was released all into the air. And the authorities spoke about this. They said, well, this is just like a normal chemical used to oxidize metals. It's something used in all these different sorts of civilian industries. But you know what it's also used in? It's also used in the creation of explosives. It's one of the essential components in the creation of explosives, right? That was February 14th. And on the same day, February 14th, in Splendora, Texas, an 18-wheeler hit and derailed a train filled with what the authorities called household chemicals. The police, the government, they did not go into any more detail than saying that household chemicals were on board this train that was derailed. No info as to what that means, but like I just mentioned, household chemicals could also be chemical weapon chemicals. It completely depends on the intent. There's so much layover in terms of what household chemicals can do when they're in terms of being weaponized that it's not so easy to tell, right? So those on the same day. Then on February 26th, another one, Lexington, North Carolina, train derailed and the railway operator says, and I read this quote very, very carefully, there was no rejection of the idea that there were hazardous chemicals on board. But what the train operator said was that there is no danger to the public from hazardous materials. That doesn't mean there weren't hazardous materials on board. Perhaps the derailment just did not cause some sort of breach, right? And then today there was another one, and that's not to count the one that happened last week also, or earlier this week, but just today, as I was preparing for this live stream, another one, another train derailment, and so far the authorities, I mean, again, it just happened, so I'm not sure. This could change. Since it could be a developing story, but as of now, as of when I did this research, that there were no hazardous material leaks reported. Again, no confirmation or denial that there were actually chemicals on these trains. So another thing, the last thing I'm going to talk about before I give you my conclusion about this whole story, is that back on February 28th, it was Moscow that again actually accused the U.S. of preparing a false flag chemical attack in Ukraine, saying that the Russian Defense Ministry said that the United States was going to do this false flag attack, blame Russia, and people were going to be so outraged in the international community that they weren't going to bother to put together any sort of independent investigation or whatever. So, and the Russian Defense Ministry even said that a new trainload of chemicals had been delivered around that time of February 28th, not so long ago, to the Ukrainian-held Donbass town of Kramatorsk. So, what's my conclusion about this? All of the sudden, these accusations of, that side or this side is going to be planning a chemical attack. All these reports from Russian soldiers specifically saying that they're being attacked with chemical weapons. And then all of a sudden, I, in my whole life, had never heard of a chemical train derailment in the United States. Of course, that doesn't mean that they don't happen. Of course, maybe they're just not reported on or whatever. But I know for a fact that throughout my entire life, there was never such a high concentration of chemical train derailments all at the same time. You know what it leads me to believe? And this is probably something that we're never going to be able to say for sure until 20 years from now or whatever, 10 years from now, or whenever the Russian archives are open, or whenever the United States government says we're going to declassify this or that. I think it's very possible that these all these trains carrying chemicals are preparing them for transport to Ukraine. It's very possible that the United States government is supplying Ukraine with chemical weapons that they're actually using on the battlefield. I mean, that is a complete possibility. I think it makes it even more likely, the fact that all of a sudden there's so many chemical train derailments all of a sudden, right? And why are they being derailed? I think it's completely possible that it's some sort of covert warfare that's going on between Russia and the United States. If you look at history, for example, in the Vietnam War, there were not regular Soviet troops fighting alongside the Vietnamese military or the Viet Cong or whatever, but there were Soviet pilots that did so, that helped the Vietnamese military, although unofficially. That's one example. So there's tons of these things that you don't find out when an actual war or a conflict is going on, because of the fact that it could escalate World War III. Could there be some sort of could this be the result of some sort of covert warfare that we're going to hear about only after this war is over and everything? I think that's completely possible. I think that's it's likely that Russia knows that the United States is trying to supply the Ukrainian military with chemical weapons, and that they're using chemical weapons in the conflict. And Russia is probably using its own covert agents that it has to try and stop that from happening. This is my speculation. Again, I don't have any evidence of this, but it just... Isn't it interesting that all this stuff is happening around the same time, right? It definitely seems to me to be more than just a coincidence. But we're going to have to see. Maybe there'll be more developments to these stories. Maybe, we'll hear something that will, confirm my suspicions or reject them, or I don't know. Maybe, like I said, 10 years from now, we'll be reading about this in the history books when it's not even relevant anymore. So that's my speculation about what's going on with these train derailments. Now, it's also connected to the next thing I wanted to talk about in this live stream, right? As you all know, using chemical weapons is totally banned by international law. It's totally banned by the international laws of war. It has been for a long time, ever since World War I was over. So this is a big no-no. So obviously, the United States does not want the world to know that Ukraine is using chemical weapons, and it certainly does not want the world to know that it's supplying chemical weapons to Ukraine, if that is indeed the case, right? But, so it begs the question, why would they use chemical weapons if the situation there for the Ukrainian military was not so dire that they felt that this is what they would have to do to continue up the war effort and actually hurt Russia in this conflict, right? If this is true, that they're using chemical weapons, that the U.S. is supplying Ukraine with them, this is very likely a sign that the conflict is not going well for Ukraine. And I have a bunch of things that I want to talk about in connection to that seem to prove my point. So the first one, and I'm just going to open up some links right now so I can show it to you on the screen. 1 second. Get this over here. Yeah, so All right. Just bear with me for a second. I'm going to make a little window so you can still see my beautiful face. All right. All right. All right, here we go. So these are a couple of things that I wanted to mention. First of all, you guys know CNN, obviously, like the biggest mainstream media propaganda outlet for the Ukrainian military right now. Like, I watch it as a Kremlin propagandist myself. Everyone says we're so propagandistic and bombastic. You gotta watch CNN. I mean, even if it makes you cringe, really watch it. It's crazy. They're just like, the brutal Russian troops raping and killing and destroying. It's like, dude, it makes North Korean news broadcasts talking about the United States look like softcore propaganda. Okay, you should really watch this stuff. That's what normally CNN is publishing, and they're constantly talking about how Russian troops are dying by the hundreds of thousands, that they're all suffering. They're calling their moms, saying, "I want to come home, mom." It's like all this, and obviously trying to emotionally manipulate their entire auditorium. By the way, I'm going to do their entire audience. By the way, I'm going to do a video on that soon about the specifically CNN's methods of propaganda, because, I mean, MSNBC and Fox News they don't even hold a candle to that. But, so, if you notice here, this is one of their recent reports, and it's titled "Situation in Bakhmut," which is Artyomovsk in the Russian terminology, "is much worse than officially reported. Ukrainian soldiers say." Okay? If CNN is reporting that Ukrainian soldiers are saying we're getting like screwed here right now, you know the situation is bad, because even when the situation is bad, they're trying to cover up what's actually going on. But this to me communicates, and based on what the Russian side has been saying as well, this to me communicates that the situation really is bad, and Artyomovsk is going to fall into Russian hands quite soon. I think it's just going to be a matter of days, to be honest. Just to cut quickly to the chat, DPRK just tells the truth about the USA, lol. I saw the comment. I agree 100%. I don't think being bombastic and propagandistic is necessarily means that you're lying or whatever, because I think DPRK news is great. But it's just CNN accuses, for example, Russia Today, where I work as my day job, they accuse us of being propagandistic and lying all the time. And meanwhile, if you compare our two shows side by side, we are much more neutral. Like, it's unbelievable how much our editors are like, you know, we got to show the Ukrainian side of stuff too. At CNN, obviously, they're not really doing that. But anyway, we'll talk more about that in another video that I'm going to do about mainstream media in general. So I'm not going to show this video, because you could go watch it on your own if you want. It's like 8 minutes long, and there's only like one tiny mention, which is also interesting. I don't know why they titled this video that about the Ukrainians saying that the situation there is just so freaking horrible, because they only mention it like for 2 seconds in the whole video. The rest of the video is like trying to justify it and be like, oh, it's probably not so bad, and they have like these military experts who are like, no, Putin's really going to lose and everything, and the video even starts not with Ukrainian soldiers, but with Putin saying we have sustained casualties as some sort of indication that things are going so badly for Russia or whatever. But really, as far as I understand, everything is pointing to the situation going not very well for Ukraine. And another thing I want to show you guys to bring that point home is this. For those of you who know The Spectator, obviously they're pretty much like the text version, the print version of bombastic CNN style propaganda. And if you look at this headline from this article from the 21st of September 2022, so not so long ago, even Putin knows he's losing, right? If you look at this article from March 4th, 2023, it's very defeatist. It's like, is Putin winning? The world order is changing in his favor. So when you get like When you get media outlets, Western media outlets that are the most aggressively anti-Russia, you know, the ones that are trying to put forward this narrative that Putin is literally the Adolf Hitler of the 20th century, and that Russia is the Third Reich, or the Fourth Reich rather, and that they're murdering and genociding people, throwing everyone in jail for saying that they don't like, you know, Putin's haircut or something, or Putin's lack thereof, whatever. Obviously, when these media outlets start to say that things are not going well for the West, you know there's a real problem. You really do. And there's also something else I wanted to show in connection to this. It looks like some people in the West, specifically the Republicans in the United States, right? We've heard about how, I mean, obviously the Democrats are behind this drive to just give Ukraine a blank check of weapons and money and give them, you know, give them their daughters and everything that Ukraine wants, you know, to fight this war against Russia. The Democrats are like all in. They want to give them everything possible, you know. And obviously, you know, the Democrats are framing it as we want to help our Ukrainian allies or whatever. And in reality, the United States wants them to fight their war for them. They're using Ukrainian soldiers as NATO troops. You know, let them go die. Let them go fight our geopolitical chess game. And we'll give them the weapons, but our people don't have to die, right? And obviously, we've heard some Republicans come out and say, you know, we don't really want to give them a blank check. There's been some Republicans that have said, yeah, you know, maybe we should put a limit on how much we want to give them, obviously for their own selfish imperialist American reasons. The reason is because all of these weapons that are going to Ukraine are draining the United States stockpiles, its own stockpiles. I mean, it's doing the same thing in Europe too. I remember there was a little while ago, the UK's defense minister said that that the country wouldn't be able to defend itself in the event of an invasion, because there's obviously nobody's going to invade the UK, but he's saying that because the stockpiles are empty, and a lot of Republicans are concerned about that too. So a lot of them are saying we should cut back on this blank check. But I found a new brand of Republican. There are a bunch of Republicans, or at least one and her supporters, that are calling not only for Kiev to continue supplying the foot soldiers, the body bags for NATO's war against Russia, but she's also calling for Ukraine to pay for the privilege to die on the front lines of NATO's war against Russia. So if you look here, you can see this headline: Ukraine warned it will have to pay for weapons. And obviously, you guys know, like, the United States has been supplying Ukraine with the same Lend-Lease Act they used to supply the Soviet Union and other countries with weapons and stuff to fight the Nazis in World War II. They're using that same law in the United States to fund Ukraine as well, which basically means a certain percentage of the weapons and equipment that's given to Ukraine will have to be paid back. It's like a debt. But this top Pentagon official is saying that Ukraine should have to start footing the bill for all of it. So they're gonna have to buy the weapons, and they're gonna have to give their lives on the front lines as well, because again, I mean, I guess it's if you look at it with the capitalist mindset, it's super smart, right? I mean, the United States, NATO convinced Ukraine that they're fighting a war for independence or something. They've convinced a huge amount of ordinary Ukrainian people that they're fighting a war of freedom against the evil Russian dictatorship. When in reality, you know, it's a war of this Kiev regime that was put in place by the West so that they could fight a war against Russia. I mean, all these other NATO states on Russia's border, Poland, Latvia, Lithuania, Estonia, it's all the same stuff. I mean, these countries, as much as they think that their nationalist governments are asserting themselves by being anti-Russia. I mean, the fact that people really believe that they have not traded that they had not traded their independence for colonial status to NATO, of which the biggest contributor is the United States. The people who think that they haven't traded their freedom for that is, I can't even believe people believe that, but whatever. So yeah, we've got this top Pentagon official saying that we could look at some of the stuff she actually said. Like, they don't have to be, they don't have that scale of capability in their budget right now. So, right, she's saying obviously they can't pay for the weapons right now. But it's a very good point that we also need to transition them to start their own defense spending planning, as well as everything else we will do to support them. So basically, they're already, this official is already calling for the wheels to start rolling to turn Ukraine not only into a military and energy colony of the West, but into an indebted, basically a debt slave country. Because if this official actually gets her way, and the United States is like, look, take it or leave it, you can have a blank check for weapons, but you got to pay all that stuff back once the war is over. Ukraine is going to be completely indebted to the United States for the rest of its, for the next 100 years. It's going to be like World War I war reparations for that Germany just ended up finishing its payments on several years ago, and if that's, I'm telling you as someone who's pro-Russian military operation, that is messed up. That should not be allowed. That's going to turn Ukraine into a debt slave country. But I'm of course of the idea that we shouldn't be sending weapons there at all. So I guess that's what I'm saying when I'm talking about the fact that if Ukraine is really using chemical weapons in this conflict, and to be honest, I think they are. That's just what I believe. Then the situation has got to be pretty bad for them, and I think everything I've just mentioned signals that it is. So going to transition back here now. So yeah, that's what I wanted to talk about in relation to that. But now we have the next part of our live stream. It has to do with the recent Ukrainian Saboteur attack on Russian territory. I don't know if you guys heard about it, but several days ago, I think it was Thursday or Friday, earlier in the week. Maybe it was even Wednesday. There was a Ukrainian incursion on actual Russian territory. In the morning, a group of Ukrainian military saboteurs snuck over the border of the Russian Federation into the Bryansk region of the country, which is a Russian border province. They snuck in and they just opened fire on civilians and killed, I think, 1 or 2 people, injured a bunch of other people. And this was accompanied by an artillery bombardment on the Russian border province of Kursk, where a bunch of children were injured. I think some of them died as well. If you guys follow our Instagram, I was even almost sent there. It was like an emergency situation. They wanted to send me there. I got my bulletproof vest, I got my helmet, I got my first aid kit. I was ready to go into the military situation, and then I sat in the vehicle we were going to take to go there, and then all of a sudden I got a call saying, "Oh no, we canceled it because basically everything had ended." It was by the time we were ready to go. It was they came over the border, they shot a bunch of people basically, and the Russian forces unleashed a huge artillery bombardment on them, and then they ran across the border back into Ukraine. So obviously a really unfortunate situation that they were able to launch such a cowardly attack, and not even attack military installations, but launch an artillery bombardment of a completely civilian area where they blew up a civilian bus. They hurt children. There are children in the hospital because of that. and they opened fire on civilians who had, were minding their own business, and then they ran away. Very cowardly. But we're gonna go over who led this this incursion onto Russian territory. And when you find out who they are, you're not going to be so surprised about the kind of cowardice they showed, okay? So first, I'm going to start with a video we're going to watch. And this video is a video that the people who launched this incursion released afterwards. All right, I'm going to try to get this. All right, for some reason it's not showing up. Well, anyway, I could share my screen. I think that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna share my screen and show the video, even though you guys aren't gonna be able to hear it, but it's gonna be in Russian anyway. And the main thing is that you're gonna be able to see what these guys look like, because I'm gonna show you some pictures later on. All right, let's take a look at this.
Мы не воюем гражданскими, не убиваем безоружных. Имейте это в виду. Теперь пришло время обычным гражданам России понять, что они не рабы. Выживайте тут, сражайтесь.
All right, so basically what was said in this video is that these guys identified themselves as being part of the so-called Russian Volunteer Corps. And they said that they were not shooting civilians. They didn't come to shoot civilians or anything, even though we have demonstrable evidence that they did. So they straight up lied. But this Russian Volunteer Corps, I'm sure a lot of you don't know about it because it's a super small fringe group of Russians who defected to Ukraine to go fight for the Ukrainian military in this military operation. And those guys you saw on that video just now, the leaders of this incursion, and the leaders, more so, they're leaders of this entire Russian Volunteer Corps, they're neo-Nazis. Surprise, surprise, right? Right? When you think about how the West says that there's no Nazis in Ukraine, but there's constantly evidence of that. I mean, if you want to see evidence of that, watch our documentary 8 years before. We've done tons of videos evidencing all of the neo-Nazis in Ukraine. And this is just more proof that they are neo-Nazis, that they attracted all these Russian neo-Nazis to defect into the military and then go fight for their side. So these guys in the Russian Volunteer Corps, they are ethnically Russian neo-Nazis that defected to the Ukrainian military to fight the Russian military, all right? And I did a report on at RT about this, so I looked into these people, and they are freaks, dude. They're like freaks of nature, nut jobs, okay? So the guy you saw in that video, his name is Denis Nikitin, okay? And he made a name for himself as, like, I guess in the neo-Nazi world years ago, like back in 2015, 2016, 2017, he was like building a network of neo-Nazis throughout Eastern Europe, appealing to the neo-Nazi scene in appealing to neo-Nazi football hooligans, appealing to the far-right scene in MMA, and he opened a clothing brand called White Rex, and this is basically how he really developed his brand, his network of neo-Nazis. It's called White Rex. And it's basically, it's in the words of Denis Nikitin himself, he said it's going to be the neo-Nazi Nike. So I'm going to show you some of this stuff on my screen right now. Let's look it up. White Rex clothing, so we could see some of the images that they use, right? it's all like borderline fascist, or I mean, you could say in-your-face fascist imagery, I guess, depending on who you ask. Because to me, the black sun is most of the time a fascist symbol, but I guess in general society, some people don't consider it to be. But they're all like, you know, borderline neo-Nazi symbols that wouldn't get banned in Germany, for example, where they ban Nazi imagery, but they're like really cutting it close, you know? Like German crosses, okay, German cross is not a Nazi symbol, but all of the Nazis use it, you know? Same thing with black sun. Okay, other people who are not Nazis, yeah, they used the black sun, but the Nazis loved it. And one thing I even spoke about in my RT report that you can look at on our channel also, I posted that video there as well, is that this Denis Nikitin also said that he modeled the White Rex clothing brand so that neo-Nazis could identify themselves in public without basically drawing public scrutiny to themselves, you know, without having an actual swastika on their shirt. So this was how he built this brand. This is how he got, you know, street cred with neo-Nazis in Eastern Europe and everything. And that was the guy speaking in the video, Denis Nikitin. So he's been identified as that guy, neo-Nazi who defected to the Ukrainian military, and I'm pretty sure he was even a founder of the Russian Volunteer Corps as well. So, neo-Nazi clothing brand, that's kind of weird to me. I don't know about you guys, but that is not as weird as this next guy, okay? The other guy, another one of these leaders of this Ukrainian Saboteur group, his name is, what was his first name? His last name is Radonsky. Kirill Radonsky. Yeah, that was his name. And this guy, okay, all right, I'll show you what his day job is, okay? We're going to look at that right now. Let's take a look at this guy's day job, all right? Kirill Radonsky. If you look him up, say you speak Russian, right? You go on Google, you look this guy up, Kirill Radonsky. This is the first thing that you're going to find, all right? This is the first thing you're going to find. I'll zoom in for you here, just a second. For those of you who don't read Russian, it says, and it's I guess some of it is in Ukrainian too. It says it's called Your Studio, and this is an advertisement for this guy's yoga classes. Okay, it says Kirill Radonsky. It says, hello, my name is Kirill. I'm a professional teacher of Hatha yoga. It's like, okay, kind of like effeminate, I guess. I don't know. Normal guy. And then if you go on his Instagram, you're going to see something a bit different. All right? What are you going to see if you go on his Instagram? You're going to see this. He's a neo-Nazi yoga master, this guy. The guy who led this frickin' incursion into Russian territory, saying that they weren't killing civilians. This guy is a member of the Russian Volunteer Corps, fighting for the Ukrainians, heiling Hitler on his Instagram, offering yoga lessons for his day job. All right? I mean, it doesn't get any fucking weirder than that, to be honest. All right? I got some more pictures here. Look, you could take a look at another one. This is him acting like a weirdo with his gun, I guess. Some weird hippie shit. This stuff is like... It's like the worst of the West connected. And I'm not saying anything bad against yoga. If you do yoga, that's fine. I don't have anything against yoga, but I think... like all this like pseudo spirituality that a lot of people have is just really cringy to me. All right, so I'm gonna show you another one here. Oh, it looks like this one. Well, I'm trying to get another picture up for you. Yeah, here we go. All right, And again, this is him in the Ukrainian military, whatever. So he's got all these neo-Nazi pictures on his Instagram. I really want this other one to show though, because I don't know why some of these images aren't showing. But this one, here we go. Yeah. This is the most important one. He's got the neo-Nazi. He's got a swastika on his vest. And I think it's funny that he's got like the Dharma Hindu swastika. It's not even the Nazi swastika, you know. But he's obviously a Nazi. I mean, you saw him heiling Hitler there, and he's a member of a neo-Nazi organization. So to me, it's strange how he can't recognize like one of those traditional Hindu swastikas with an actual Nazi swastika. I don't know. I think it's really weird. But yeah, so that's basically how this Ukrainian cowardly attack was launched, led by a neo-Nazi yoga master, led by a football hooligan guy who has his own brand of clothes that are neo-Nazi, and there was another guy also that I didn't really take any pictures or anything of the other guy, but there was a third leader of the group. I didn't really go into detail because the only thing worth noting about him is actually that he was a Navalny supporter. So we've got like the dream team, right? The dream team of Russian defector losers who went over to the Ukrainian side to go fight alongside neo-Nazis. Neo-Nazis themselves, neo-Nazi yoga masters, and supporters of Navalny. There you go. liberals and neo-Nazis fighting alongside each other. Where have we seen that before, right? It's like Weimar Republic. Anyway. All right, so that's all I wanted to say about this incursion. We haven't seen any more Ukrainian incursions on Russian heartland territory since then, which is good. So I think this was just really like a PR stunt kind of thing. They certainly got some attention, but really cowardly attack and everything. The next thing I wanted to talk about, I've got two last things I want to talk about, but actually three. But the next thing I want to talk about is pretty quick. I just want to bring some attention to a recent video we uploaded on the channel for Day of the Defender of the Fatherland. This is a holiday in Russia. It's basically, they colloquially call it Men's Day, because in Russia we have another holiday, Women's Day, International Women's Day. It's still widely celebrated in Russia. It's a socialist holiday. It was one of the most important holidays in the Soviet Union. It's still widely celebrated, but they also had a military day, which had its name changed several times. At first it was Red Army Day, then it was Soviet Army Day, then it was Soviet Army and Navy Day. Now it's Day of the Defender of the Fatherland. But essentially, since all men in Russia are conscriptable, a lot of people just consider it to be Men's Day. So it's a time where like girlfriends and wives, fiancés, they get their man a small gift and basically, you know, talk about how much they mean to them. But it's also a time for political activism because, like I said, it's actually a real serious military holiday. And so we did a video where we went to a demonstration that was organized by the KPRF, the Communist Party of the Russian Federation, the Left Front, and a number of other smaller left parties by the Karl Marx Monument in the center of Moscow. They organized this demonstration to be in the name of the military, and it was actually, you know, a show of force to demonstrate support for the Russian military operation. Now, if you're watching right now and you're a leftist in the West and that's confusing for you, it's true. The KPRF supports the Russian military operation. Actually, the KPRF was one of the initiators in the Duma of the idea that actual action had to be taken in Donbass against the Kiev fascist regime. They needed to. It was the KPRF that first suggested that the People's Republic of Lugansk, the People's Republic of Donetsk, they had to be recognized as independent entities, and some sort of military action had to be taken to protect these people, to put an end to this war, because there is a war going on, but it started back in 2014, and the Ukrainians started it. The Ukrainian government began. So that we did this this video. We got a video of some pretty cool political speech by a politician high up in the KPRF, but we also got lots of interviews with rank and file people who were there. We got lots of interviews with people who used to live in the USSR, and we asked them a lot about that. They had a lot of interesting stuff to say, so if you haven't seen that yet, please go check it out. But one thing I wanted to mention about it, and if you haven't watched it already, definitely keep this in mind when you're watching. If you did watch it already, I suggest you think about this and maybe even go back and rewatch this interview at the end of the video with the guy with the Ushanka hat. But every time I do these interviews, I'm just in awe. I'm so surprised by how smart these people are. Like, these people tell me, oh yeah, I was a metal worker in a factory, but let me talk to you about Shakespeare and philosophy. Like, these people that lived through the Soviet Union, that got a Soviet education, they're still alive, and we have to talk to them because they're the older generation now, and they are people who were not like, not even, a lot of them were not even university educated. They were not part of the intellectual class of people in the Soviet Union. They were hard laborers. They were blue-collar workers, and they still had access to an education system that was so advanced that they can cite Shakespeare off the top of their head, which this guy does in the interview that I did with him at the end of the video. And if you speak Russian, I'm sure this is even like more profound for you too, just listening to the way he speaks, because now people kind of talk like Americans talk. They're like, yeah, like back when I was like at school, we did like this and that. There's a Russian equivalent to that where like people say kakbly and tipa all the time. They're filler words. Soviet people do not speak like that. They are like they're super articulate. They articulate themselves very, very well, and it's like a sign of high education. And you talk to all these people who are super articulate, they can cite all these books, quotes off the top of their head, and you ask them what they did, they'll be like, yeah, I was an engineer, you know, or I was a metal worker, or I was a retail worker even. Like, these people, the kind of education that was available to working class people during the Soviet Union was bar none. It's nothing we've ever seen before, I think, at least in Russia or in the United States. In other socialist countries, obviously, maybe, you know, they probably still they have socialist education, so they also have this sort of advanced Soviet education, you know. I mean, North Korea is another example as well. Whatever you want to say about it, there's no disputing the facts. The United Nations established facts that the DPRK education system is absolutely amazing when you consider its relation to other countries of similar GDP and similar standards of living. The DPRK education system is super advanced. People there are super educated, even if they're like farmers, you know. They have access to that sort of education, and even the healthcare system as well. We can go into that too. The people in this video spoke about that. In the DPRK, the healthcare system, sure, it's got problems. I mean, the DPRK is living under a sanctions regime, and it's been suffering that throughout its entire existence. But considering those conditions and the fact that they can provide healthcare to their entire population on a generally good level is a huge achievement. And that was the same thing in the Soviet Union. You know, obviously, except in the Soviet Union, they had many more resources and it was much more advanced. So I would definitely keep that in mind if you're going to go back to watch that, or if you're going to watch it for the first time. Think about the kind of stuff that these Soviet people are saying. You know, or we can also talk about the grandma who had the giant Soviet flag, who's like has a super advanced understanding of contemporary politics. You know, These are people that went through the Soviet education system, and it's not an accident that they're so well educated, well spoken, and just all around really smart, you know. So that's all I wanted to talk about with that. Make sure to check out the video. And the next thing now that I wanted to do, a lot of people have been talking about, actually, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to show this. Hold on. Oh, that's the video I was supposed to show before. Okay. I want to talk about something that a lot of people have been asking me about. Basically, this United States former soldier who volunteered for the Ukrainian military and then defected to the Russian side. I've been so busy this week, and it happened this week, where he defected, and actually one of my colleagues at Russia Today got an interview with him. I haven't been able to really look into it and make a judgment for myself. Excuse me, make a judgment for myself as to whether or not he's genuine or whatever, because a lot of people were like, don't trust this guy. Other guys were like, oh, this guy's awesome. I mean, I think it's hard. I haven't met him, and I think it's hard to tell if someone's genuine or not just based on an interview. But I have not watched the interview yet. It's not too long, so I was thinking on this live stream, we will watch the interview together, and I'll give some live feedback, some live reaction. We'll do that until the end of the live stream, and then I have a surprise for you all. So definitely stick around until the end of this live stream, because you're really going to want to hear what I have to say at the end. It's a big surprise. So, all right. Let me see if I can get this interview going, and then we're going to start. All right. Just working it in the studio panel. All right, I'm going to open up the interview, and then I'm going to put a little window of myself in the corner as well. So we can just stop the interview when we want, and I can give some commentary. All right? All right, let's go.
Raging for over a year. Allegations of war crimes have been made repeatedly by both sides, but in a rare move, they were revealed publicly by a former combatant. After serving in the US military, John McIntyre signed up as a mercenary in the Ukrainian army at the start of the conflict. He later defected to Russia and shared his experiences on alleged atrocities by Ukrainian forces, as well as the direct role of the US in the conflict. Here's Arty's Murad Gaziev's exclusive interview.
For almost a year, former US Army soldier John McIntyre was a foreign mercenary in Ukraine.
Down there, it's me and all the boys. Say what's up, y'all.
Earlier this month, he defected to Russia. He brought everything with him: papers, files, intelligence, and maps. The thing is, he always meant to.
The first question is, why are you here? I mean...
Well, it's the reason I came to Ukraine in the first place. You know, I'm a communist, I'm an anti-fascist, and...
Well, communist, anti-fascist, good guy. Of course, I mean, I'm always excited and ecstatic to hear when there's a communist and an anti-fascist actually putting his you know, words to action. You know, that's one of the things that I want. One of the reasons I came to Russia. I wanted to do something. I wanted to learn more about Soviet history, about communist history from sources that were not translated into English, because that's where all the good stuff is. You know, in the West, a lot of, aside from Progress Publishers, pretty much all the stuff translated into English is negative stuff about the Soviet Union. That's why it was translated in the first place. I wanted to do exactly the same thing. I wanted to come to Russia, improve my level of Russian so I could communicate with these anti-imperialist people. You know, I didn't do any military stuff, obviously, and for legal reasons, I wouldn't say if I would or wouldn't if it was an opportunity for me at that time. But my fate ended up being fighting the information war. So I always love seeing when a comrade turns his words into actions. It's really cool to see that. And I encourage everyone to do that who's watching right now, who's a comrade, to do that to the farthest extent possible. You know, in whichever way, small way you can do that for yourself. Now, I was also getting some comments that like, oh, well, this guy says he's a communist and an anti-imperialist, but like nobody in the United States has heard of him. You know, a lot of these communists have a reputation, and at least somebody in the movement knows him. So that has given rise to suspicion that maybe he's like full of it and he's a double agent or something. But dude, my understanding, my response to that would be that he would be a really bad spy if someone found out that he was a communist back in the United States. Like, hello? He was trying to blend in with neo-Nazis and then defect to Russia, according to his story. So it's good I mean, if he's telling the truth, it's good you didn't find anything about him.
We have to fight fascism everywhere, you know, so when I came to Ukraine, I knew that I would try to get as much information as I could about, you know, anything that would be helpful and defect across lines. The problem is when I was in Kharkov, I was going to swim across, and I found out they had snipers in position. So if anybody, and actually found out that the snipers were for defectors, not for actually protection. They were actually, anybody that tried to defect, they would shoot them, you know.
And they accused Russia of using quote-unquote Stalinist tactics, right? Like having the barrier brigades. But I just gotta say, this guy's got big balls, what he decided to do. If he's telling the truth and everything, I mean, that's really cool.
Since March 2022, John served in Ukraine's Foreign Legion and Nationalist Battalion Karpatskaya Sech. He saw and documented the Ukrainian war machine in all its ugly glory from the inside. He became part of it.
God bless Ukraine, God bless America, but you, Russia.
You, Russia. It's Russian.
Russia. Can I step on this?
Slava Ukraini.
Jenny Lynn, I just saw your comment. You think a guy like this based would be known by U.S. comments? That's a good one. Probably not.
Slava.
It's Russia.
Russia.
As time went on, you know, I had to become more nationalistic, more Nazistic, you know, doing...
Does that explain the videos where you were like Putin and...
Yeah, of course. It's part of it to maintain my cover because I got to become them. You know what I mean? If I'm going to be with them, I got to become them, you know, and doing the, you know, Hitler salute, stepping on Russian flags, everything.
Oh, yeah! Karpatska Siege, baby. Slava Ukraina. Heroin Slava. Slava, Slava, Slava. Yeah.
When I first came, I kind of expected they wouldn't be that big of a problem. Like, I kind of, you know, assumed that it was just like I didn't think there was actually that many. But when I came, I was really surprised. It was everybody have, you know, tattoos and Nazi symbolism. Sometime later on.
Dude, just even more evidence. More evidence. Just every day there's more evidence of neo-Nazis being all over the place in Ukraine. I mean, what more evidence do people need? Even the Western media was saying that there was a huge problem with neo-Nazis in Ukraine. It's just all of a sudden Russia's military operation began and the script changed. There was even I forgot what outlet did this, but it was one of these Atlantic Council or whatever. I remember I even saw they wrote one article before the Russian military operations. Oh, it was the BBC. The BBC said that Ukraine was trying to downplay the presence of neo-Nazis within their military. And then after the military operation began, they said that Putin was trying to overblow the presence of neo-Nazis in the Ukrainian military. It's just like, they're like 1984. Ignorance is strength, dude.
On my Facebook page, I had pictures of Che Guevara and the Soviet Union, and I got questioned for having communist views, and I had to think quick on my feet, you know, and I just told them, I said, hey, I'm an anti-fascist, I'm here to fight Russian imperialism and the Nazis and this and that. And they said, no, the Russians aren't the Nazis, we're the Nazis.
Oh, wow. Guys, straight up, this is the first time I've seen this. That's even surprising to me, dude. Like the kind of the culture shock it must have been for all of these, I don't know, like soy boy anarchist pseudo leftists in the West. They were like Slava Ukraini that decided to go to Ukraine and thought that they were like somehow defending like values of social democracy or like liberal values or something, and they get there to go fight some Russian Nazis, and they find out, oh shit, we're the bad guys, we're the Nazis. That must be such an eye-opener, dude.
And
Who said this? Who said this?
it was just some guys from Croatia or Czech, I can't remember what they were. But
These are foreigners as well.
foreigners, yeah, foreigners.
The proliferation and dominance of Nazi ideology, from swastikas to SS emblems, is well documented and studiously ignored by Western states and media.
And we're supporting these guys, and these are supposed to be our ally, and we want to put them in NATO with us, and they can't even follow Geneva Convention, and they're supposed to be our friends. You know, like, this would never fly in America. The United States would never stand for this. Our whole country is literally burning in front of our eyes, and we're spending $500 million for these Nazis, billions of dollars for a Nazi government. You know, so that's infuriates me, and it's time for the American people to stand up and take control of our country.
I agree 100%. I agree 100%. We have the United States has the most expensive medical care system in the world, and we're giving billions of dollars to the Ukrainian military, who are Nazis. And you know what? If you want to like do something about that, and not, you know, give money to these neo-Nazis, by the way, it's pretty much over half of everyone's federal income tax in the United States goes directly to war. So a huge percentage of that is going straight to neo-Nazis. If you want to object to that, say like, I don't agree with us supporting Ukraine, I don't want to pay that part of my taxes, you get thrown in jail. You know, people throughout United States history, there have been periods where they tried to protest federal taxation connected to military spending because they were pacifists. They were all put in prison. And it's mostly Quakers that did that, actually.
Over the year, John spent most of his time in squads with foreign mercenaries. He watched and documented names, places, crimes, and much more.
The Russian position is 3 kilometers here. Maybe in the night, one group come back in the position, they kill these pigs directly.
Tell me this. What about war crimes?
Where to start, you know? My second
Where to
day in
start?
Ukraine, we were in Lvov, and we were in like a school, but we were in like the basement, and what they did is they have a group of people, Roma, but they call them gypsy, you know. And what they did is they take the refugees and put them above us and the soldiers below. That way, if they bombed a school, they'd say, look, they bombed a school full of refugees. And this is a common practice in...
Dude, this is great that he's talking about this, because also these are the types of war crimes that have been documented by the United Nations since way before Russia's military operation even began, specifically that the Ukrainians were carrying out. All the way back to 2015. I remember I read the United States Human Rights Report from 2015 that, or the OBCW, or sorry, OBC was in the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe. In Russian, it's OB. They made a report about war crimes being committed in the Donbas conflict, and the Ukrainian military was constantly using civilian installations as shielding, essentially, for its military forces. And then, not so long ago, in 2022, we saw the reports from Amnesty International saying the Ukrainian military is committing serious war crimes, and Zelensky complained, Kiev complained, and they had to apologize and retract it. Just because Zelensky was offended. I mean, they told the truth. That's what you get when you dare to tell the truth in the West. They shut you down.
Donetsk, Kharkov, we occupy civilian houses next to houses that people are still living in. That way, if they bomb and kill civilians, they bring in the news crew and they say, look, this house, they blew up and they killed these civilians, but what the camera doesn't show you is to the left and to the right is a house is filled with military, you know. Of course, I haven't seen this in person, thank God, but I know that a lot of captured Russian soldiers, they'll take and they'll cut the genitalia with the knives and everything, and cut their stomachs open and slit their throats, cut their heads off and stuff like this, you know.
I'm not surprised about that, to be honest, because I remember when there was a scandal about a Ukrainian medical officer who basically admitted that they were castrating Russian prisoners, and he had to apologize and said, no, I just didn't say it correctly. But they definitely are doing that stuff, dude.
Really horrible stuff, you know.
Was this the work of nationalist extremists or just...
Yeah, just extremists and different organizations as all, you know, Karpatska Siege.
People you knew?
Yeah.
Did any of them...
yeah, they were foreigners, yeah.
But did any of them take part in, you know, commit any of these crimes?
Yeah, they, I told you earlier, they had shot 3 people in the back of the head. They were foreigners. One was from Portugal, one was from France, and one was from Argentina.
They proud?
Yeah, they were proud, yeah, of course.
John put up every appearance of a good mercenary.
Oh yeah! Yeah! Oh yeah!
Yeah. John came prepared. For years, he served in the U.S. military.
1st Armored Division. It was hot out there. It was at Fort Bliss, Texas.
How long were you in the military for?
2 years.
2 years.
Yeah.
As I saw someone say in the chat, he's definitely not going to be let back to the United States.
Good 2 years and a month. Huh?
Good years or?
No, not really. Not really. A lot of drinking, you know.
In the army?
Oh yeah, of course. Normal, standard practice, of course.
Really?
Yeah, of course.
On base?
Yeah. Cocaine, everything, weed, anything you want, you know. Prostitutes, hookers, you know, everything.
On base?
Yeah, they arrested one guy. He was a cavalry scout, and he, in his barracks room, he had like bricks of cocaine. You know, he was like a
dealer.
Yeah, he was like the distributor for the whole base.
But
dude, to be honest, even I'm surprised about that. That's nuts.
All that training in Texas, it didn't prepare him for this.
God, that was close.
We're northwest of Severodonetsk. We are getting nailed, dude. We are getting nailed bad. We just had a massive casualty event. Just in the last 30 minutes, I've had like 10 close calls today. Dude, like we are getting nailed. It's too much for me, dude. This Donbass, dude. This war, man, in general, ain't no joke, dude. People are getting ate the up left and right, but I should have went to college.
I've had a lot of moments where I'm like, oh my God, this is stupid, you know, what the hell am I doing, you know? But it had to be done because, you know, the Ukrainian government and Nazis that control the government and control the population, you know, the things they're doing in Ukraine to the Russian people, they need to be talked about, you know, they need to be stopped, and we've got to fight Nazism everywhere we go, even in America.
John documented everything. Yeah. It was in his phone, his head, and in the papers he brought along.
When you came over, you said you were a spy. Did you hand over, for example, like bases and stuff, at least?
Yeah, of course.
Intelligence agencies?
Of course, everything from the command structure to names, you know, weaponry, everything. And I was successful in that, you know.
More than successful. John also testified about how deep U.S. involvement in this conflict is.
Ooh, this is going to get juicy because obviously the United States is trying to help the Ukrainian military to the farthest extent possible while showing the extent to which that help goes as little as possible. Let's take a listen here.
There has been a U.S. participation in the war. When I was in the International Legion, there was he was like a military intelligence officer from the Navy.
And the U.S. Navy.
Yeah, and he had, well, he was in the Foreign Legion. And he had a satellite phone and a computer provided by the CIA. And every day he would call his contacts and he would get information about the positions, troop movements, and so on and so forth. And
Do you remember his name?
yeah.
What was it?
Wait, no, what was his name? Hang on, I'm so sorry, I can't remember.
First name at least?
I think it was like Marcus or something like that. Like, for example, they would provide like grid coordinates.
According to him, the United States feeds Ukraine the weapons and data to wage war. All that is left for Ukrainians and their foreign mercenaries to do is to point their weapons and shoot where America tells them.
Yeah, that's not surprising at all. I think one of the main reasons, a lot of people are talking about Western weapons supplies to the Ukrainian military as being the main reason why the Ukrainian military has been able to hold out this long. But I think and it's equally as important, the sort of strategic coordination that the United States has offered the Ukrainian military. I mean, basically after that super successful Ukrainian counteroffensive in Kharkov and Kherson, that was, planned by the United States. It came out later. They basically planned everything. The Ukrainians would not be able to do it correctly without serious involvement by United States Pentagon officials.
Down here in the Donbass, it's been cold, wet. It's been hell, bombs, but we're finally in the truck. Say what's up, boys! Yeah! Hey! Hey!
Would you say that most of the foreigners that you came in with have left?
Yeah, most of them. Mostly some because of they realized the reality of this war, and then some were injured, and then some were killed, And it's really sad about the ones that are killed, because when they get killed, if they don't get sent home, they get cremated, then they get sent home,
But this is what they chose, isn't it?
Well, they chose it. I mean, they chose to come and fight for fascists. They chose to come and fight for Nazis. You know what I mean? So.
And then there's the corruption.
Totally agree.
Always the corruption in Ukraine. Western taxpayers, says John, are being robbed left and right.
And then they take the insurance money, and then they put the insurance money in their pockets. Yeah.
Is this what the...
Yeah, that's another thing. I mean, if you guys don't already know, Ukraine is like one of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's one of the most corrupt governments in the world. And it's now getting billions and billions of dollars and all these weapons and everything. They're already, specifically the weapons, I mean, we don't know where the money's going, except that it's going into the pockets of Ukrainian officials. But we're already starting to see how a lot of these weapons that have been supplied to the Ukrainian military by the United States, by the European Union, they're reappearing already in the hands of terrorists in Africa. Who knows where they're going to end up years from now. It's crazy. They're going to end up in the hands of some faction in the next biggest conflict.
Yeah, they take in the insurance money too.
For foreign fighters?
Yeah.
And was this a common practice?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I'd say 90% of the families, they don't get their insurance money from, and they take in salaries too. Like if a soldier terminates contract, like I did with the Karpatska Sich, I terminated contract, yeah?
Right.
They take in the last paycheck, they take in this money for themselves. But this doesn't go back into the unit. It just goes straight to the commander's pocket. And it's not just with the insurance. It's with there's a huge black market going on with Javelin rockets, the M4 rifles, and M240 Bravo machine gun.
That's exactly what I was just saying. I mean, this is exactly right. All of these high quality American supplied weapons they're obviously in one of the most corrupt countries in the world. There's going to be a black market develop, and it's probably more like a black hole. We're only going to see the real extent to which all of these weapons are going to go to places where they were not intended for. We're only going to see that years later.
And all the weaponry coming in, they take in all these and they sell it.
Have you seen this?
Yeah. Yeah, they stole, like, when I was in the Legion, they took like 20 Javelin rockets. They took like 60 M4s and like 20 M240s.
Who took them?
The logistics sergeant major and then the battalion commander, they were both in on it and stuff. They're actually...
In Karpatskaya Sich or...?
In the Legion.
Yeah,
in the Legion.
Were they Ukrainians?
Yeah, they were Ukrainians, yeah.
These weapons then disappear. Some make their way overseas into the hands of terrorists, warlords, traffickers, jihadists, and criminals.
Exactly what I was saying.
All courtesy of Western taxpayers.
I noticed when I was in Ukraine, they have like a lot of military shops. And I remember one day I'm sitting there thinking, man, these...
It's so funny, like, as if it wasn't bad enough that our money is going to fascists. It's even worse that the fascists themselves are so corrupt that it's not only going to fascists, it's also going to Islamic fundamentalists. Ridiculous.
Helmets are really nice, you know, those almost look like the American helmets. And then what I realized is that all these helmets and body armor and these plate carriers and stuff coming in, they get stolen and then sold on the black market to these shops, and then the shop makes money off of it too.
Nothing, it seems, is taboo for Ukraine. Be it open Nazi ideology, war crimes, theft, or anything else. Nothing's holy.
October 21st, we just got here. We're in Donetsk, somewhere in the Donbass. Yeah, in the Donbass, baby. And, my friend Aurelio.
Hi.
We're staying in this church for now. It's cold as heck, you know, we got some good food though, so.
I actually was watching a documentary the other day of them torturing, I can't remember, they was trying to get him to say some Ukrainian word, and he couldn't say it, so they kept torturing him and stuff like that, because it's funny to them, you know. It's a hatred, you know, they hate these people. They hate the Russian people.
Yeah.
They want to kill them. They want to genocide them. They want to remove them from the land. And America doesn't mind giving them money for this because they know that they can send in companies like Texaco, Chevron Mobil, Shell, and so on and so forth to extract all that oil. And then they can send in the American agricultural companies like John Deere and International to make all the money from the agricultural side of it too.
There are trillions at...
Yeah, you know, that's an amazing point, because one of the things that is important to understand, I remember I read this somewhere before, is that Ukraine is not a country that lacks oil. It's actually a country that lacks the infrastructure to harvest that oil, which is why they, which is why Euromaidan which is why it was caused by basically this rift between people who wanted to go with the European Union's energy option and the Russian energy option. It's not because Ukraine doesn't have oil, it's because Ukraine doesn't have the means to harvest it. And also, Ukraine is a mainly agricultural country. Donbass was basically the center of its industry. And like he said, I mean, the Ukrainians, you could go on the internet and find some nasty videos from Ukrainian television where they're just saying, you know, these people are dirt. These people are like basically they treat them like they feel like they're white trash. They just have hated that region for the longest time. You could see it in news broadcasts from like the early 2010s and before that as well.
Stake. Ukraine has already been told that it will have to repay ludicrous sums that the West spent on arms supplies. Ukraine is unlikely to ever be able to do that. What it can't pay in cash it will have to pay in resources to Western companies.
Wow, I swear I haven't watched this yet, and it looks like everything that we just spoke about on this live stream has been repeated here. Just so true. I mean, it has to. We have to understand that the war right now, Ukraine is not just being used as foot soldiers for NATO's war. You know, the Western propaganda says that what Ukraine is being victimized by Russia. Ukraine's being victimized by the West. They're not only being used as foot soldiers for NATO's war against Russia, but they're being turned into a debt slave country that's never going to be able to repay back their debts that they're going to incur from this war.
But for John, time has almost run out.
I actually had to leave because I had actually planned, before I left, I had also planned to infiltrate the Azov battalion and to gain information about their organization as well. But essentially what had happened was I was having a conversation about the war crimes being committed, and even worse than being a spy, I was compromised as a whistleblower. So, which is worse, obviously, because that means a bullet to the back of the head.
Oh, shit.
Really?
Yes, anybody that confesses is known to about to confess war crimes, they get shot in the back of the head, you know.
Have you seen this?
No, I haven't, but a lot of people go missing, you know. A lot of people, they just go missing one day.
Including foreigners?
Including foreigners, yes.
Earlier this month, John packed
Wow, I didn't even know about that. That's crazy.
everything. Papers, documents, maps, and so much more. Everything he had gathered over the year and made his long-planned defection.
Essentially, I fled, I went to Odessa, and I actually had to call my mom. I'm like, look, I'm in too deep, you know, these people, they're about to kill me, and I was really emotional, and luckily my family was able to scrounge up $300 to send me so I could go to Chisinau. And then from Chisinau, once I'd made contact and everything and got my visa, I went to Istanbul and then to Moscow on a plane, so.
Was you?
Yeah.
I mean,
Wow.
It was nerve-wracking. I mean, I had been compromised, you know, and that meant that I was about to be executed.
The wealth of information he has provided is already being used by the Russian military and law enforcement, who have lists of war crimes and now even more names to them. There is years of work ahead. But we had one final question for John. A year, after all, is a long time.
I mean, they're going to watch this. They're going to see this.
Yeah,
The people you served with.
Yeah.
What would you say to them?
All's fair in love and war, you know.
That's right. That's
It is what
right.
it is. Spies exist, you know, and I'm a spy. And mission accomplished.
What's up, boys? For the TikTok, baby. Yeah, this is awesome.
Wow. Definitely a really, yeah, like you're saying in the chat, an amazing story. This guy is really interesting. I'm gonna try to get an interview with him on the channel if I can. And all I gotta say to this guy is, welcome to the motherland, and also welcome to the Mirotvorets kill list, because they're definitely gonna be looking for this guy, the Ukrainians. They're definitely gonna try to assassinate him, I think. But I would say in Moscow he'll definitely be safe. So, but anyway, guys, I hope you liked that reaction. I personally found that interview really interesting. I would really like to interview him personally and find out what he has to say more about, like, a communist analysis of this situation. You know, because obviously here he spoke about his. He spoke about his, you know, actions as a spy, what actually happened with him. But I would really like to understand the reasons, the political reasoning he has for doing this as well. I think it'd be really useful for Western leftists who are not really in a good understanding of the military operation and everything. I have a feeling that he's probably got a very similar idea as I do, as the KPRF does. You know, he's basically a real communist, and that's good to see. So yeah, I will definitely try to get an interview with him. I'll ask at my job if they can give me his contact information and everything. There's a possibility I won't be able to do it because no doubt, like, the FSB is watching his back. I don't know, maybe they will not allow me to get in touch with him. I don't know, but we'll see. Anyway, for those of you who stayed around till the end, I really appreciate it because there is a special announcement I have to make, which I'm also going to make in a separate video, but you guys are going to be the first ones to hear about it, all right? We have surpassed 10,000 subscribers on YouTube. It happened about a month ago. I'm a little late to the punch, but we are going to have a giveaway of Soviet memorabilia to patrons of the channel for this. And we're also going to have another giveaway of Soviet memorabilia from Russia, authentic Soviet memorabilia, for surpassing 1,000 subscribers on Instagram as well. So if you want to be eligible for this giveaway, I would very much ask you, please become a patron of the channel, because only patrons are going to be eligible for this. We need donations more than ever because, of course, we have a website to keep up. We have people writing articles for us that need to get paid as well. And right now, that's basically, you know, for the longest time, it's been coming out of my own pocket. So the more donations we can get, the more we can have this be more better funded and not have so much of it come out of my pocket. So I would really appreciate it if you became a patron. And not only would I give you the opportunity to be eligible for this giveaway by becoming a patron of the channel, but there's also perks for the different tiers as well. So you could just give $5 a month. That's the rank and file revolutionary tier. That's completely awesome. You can have, you'd be eligible to have monthly Zoom calls with the Revolution Report team personally. If you want to, you know, give a huge contribution and become a general secretary, I will send you a bust of Lenin that I sign myself and write a letter to you on the back of it with a permanent marker, and I will send it to your house. That's another perk of that. So if you guys want to become patrons, it will be a great help to the channel. You'll be eligible for both of these giveaways. So I'm giving away 2 pieces of Soviet memorabilia, and I'm going to make a separate video about this, of course, so the rest of the channel can hear about it. But I will be announcing the winners either at the end of next week or 2 weeks from now. So that'll give some people time to join us on Patreon and become a paid subscriber to the channel. So, alas, everyone, I'd like to say thank you in advance for those who are going to become patrons. I'd like to thank everyone for watching this live stream. We're going to try to do this every week so that I can give you a Marxist-Leninist, anti-imperialist analysis of current events and updates on the military operation, on what the KPRF is doing, etc., etc. So, without further ado, I'm going to put an end to the live stream. Thanks a lot for watching. See you then in the next video. And